The Chimera Ant arc has some of the highest peaks in all of Shounen anime. And even though the pacing in the anime is fairly slow, it perfected many things. Character dynamics, nen abilities, and the one I'm going to talk about today, the masterfully written fights. Most fights in Hunter x Hunter are won without the use of brute force. Normally there's strategy and planning that goes into them. There are 5 key fights, each are unique and master their own themes. So let's dive in, and of course, spoiler warnings, because this is the art and the beauty of war in Hunter x Hunter. Kite vs Pitou. This is the first major fight in the Chimera Ant arc. It completely changed the tone of the entire story with a key theme, hopelessness. This fight has a major emotional impact on our main character, but of course I'll talk about that later. Straight after the Greed Island arc, Gon and Killua meet up with Kite, where he reveals the main threat of this arc, the ever-evolving Chimera Ants, who are a terrifying and humanity-threatening species. Kite was a past student of Jing, and if you read the manga, he was actually introduced very early on. However, in the anime, he was only introduced at the start of this arc, which, you know, I'm not gonna lie, it definitely led to less emotional connection to him as an anime-only watcher. A few episodes after his introduction, we see these 3 encounter their first Chimera Ants, who they already know are dangerous, and they understand that they're catching up with human intelligence. They defeat these Chimera Ants fairly easily, which, you know, definitely gives them a full sense of confidence. Especially for Gon and Killua, because of course our boy Kite is staying alert. He knows that there's stronger ones out there. Pitou, which is the main antagonist of this fight, is then born in the following episode, and is the first of the king's 3 royal guards. Instantly after she's born, she can use nen, which is crazy, which is used to help her detect their presence. This shifts the mood and the tone of the arc, as, get ready for this bar that I'm about to drop, the hunters are becoming the hunted. Ooh. Pitou dashes at them ridiculously fast, completely freezing the duo, which in my opinion is crazy. I mean, they're fully outmatched by a newborn, who has no training of nen, but completely dominates them in all areas. Well, physically obviously this is. This really did change my view of nen, which is not a bad thing, can I just say. It shows that, you know, just because you're good at nen doesn't make you safe in this dangerous world. Killua, being more mature than Gon, accepts that if they stay, they're absolutely toast. So he knocks out our boy Gon and escapes, saving both of their lives, unfortunately leaving Kite to fight Pitou alone. Before Killua escapes with Gon, we see Pitou completely slice Kite's arm off. Kite screams for them to run, and run is what Killua did. This fight is obviously emotionally brutal and really highlights hopelessness in this arc. It's the best representation of hopelessness, because this slaughter was completely done off screen. We don't witness the fight, we just see Kite's severed head resting on Pitou's lap. Kite, who is much stronger than Gon and Killua at this stage, never had a single chance to begin with. And whilst I said earlier on that Hunter x Hunter shows that power is less important when it comes to fights, this fight completely goes against that, and just shows us the harsh reality. Sometimes the opponent is actually just stronger. The aftermath of this fight shows Gon in the first stage of grief, which is denial. He can't accept that Kite is dead, and only later do we see his actual reaction to Kite's death. Obviously I'll talk about that fight later. This is good though, you know, it shows that Gon's still a kid, and that Killua balances out Gon's recklessness by being smart enough to run. Because let's be real, imagine Gon trying to fight Pitou at this stage. It would have, yeah, Hunter x Hunter's just ended, you know what I mean, that's just the end. Another reason why this fight is so important is because it's the first time in Hunter x Hunter where like a main good character has died. And you know, we can see the effects this has on our boys. Wait. Chimera Ant's pacing is like walking through miles of nails, barefoot, in the freezing cold, naked. Now, I do actually kind of agree with this comment. I saw it and I chuckled. It's a banger. Sometimes the pacing in this arc was cheeks, but moments like this next fight make it all completely worth it. I'm talking about the most underrated one. I haven't seen many people talk about it. Phaeton versus Zazan. The theme of this fight is really just humans versus animals, and power versus intelligence. But I want to actually focus on the power system in this fight. This fight established, you know, at least for me, that Nen is my favourite power system of all time. But let's give some backstory first. The Chimera Ants start their invasions on other countries. You know, they invade Meteor City, which, as we know, is the original home for most of the Phantom Troop members. And these troop members do not like the company, I'm not going to lie. They see them as pests that they are ready to exterminate, which, you know... These Chimera ants were gassing themselves up too much. They thought they were goated, they thought they were LeBron. They weren't. This specific lady, Zazan, who Phaeton fights, believes herself to be some sort of ant queen, and sets up this fat-ass nest. Her overconfidence is a character trait that does lead to her demise, as she believes her species is ahead of the humans. Phaeton is like the perfect representation of a violent and well-crafted Nen user. Not just raw strength as well, you know, he's got years and years of experience. And again, I've said this before, he must be related to Killua. Look how he looks. The way he fights is also beautiful. He's not reckless like Gon, he's tactical, and very similar to Killua in terms of fighting. He observes a lot, sees patterns, and has some amazing Nen abilities. At first in this fight, it seems like he's the one getting beaten, getting his ribs cracked and firming many attacks. They fight at some stupid pace as well, which is impressing Kaluto. Phaeton looks so cold in this battle, man. Some of these frames are so clean. One of his attacks is really similar to Killua, where he can pretend to be in many places at once. Also, this girl needs a change of clothes, man. What is happening? Our boy Phaeton loses an arm, and Phinks is looking gassed. But then he activates a Nen technique, which is specifically made for when he's losing a fight. And when I tell you this shit turns the tide, I'm telling you it turns the tide. We all know that Nen gets more powerful when it's linked to strong emotions and desires, as well as like when there's restrictions to it, like what Kurapika did. So Phaeton's Pain Packer ability comes about when he's taken damage and is very, very pissed off about it. He starts speaking in his native tongue, you know, stuff like that happens. That's how crash out worthy he is. The other troop members see this and instantly get the fuck out of there. You know, they're so confident that Phaeton will win, so they just leave. This is why it's such a perfect power system, man. Phaeton had to take damage and suffer through lots and lots of pain. But through this pain, he can manifest a stupidly powerful technique. Now, like this lizard lady, which we're going to call her that, gets confused as to when Phaeton put this conjured clothing on, and notices the disproportional increase in his strength. And then he spawns in the fucking sun, which is literally a JoJo stand. But this time, the sun is literally all the pain Lizard gave Phaeton, embodied in, like I said, the fucking sun. This ability was so stupidly strong, it destroyed pretty much all of the ant's nest. This is a beautiful fight in my opinion that really cemented Nen in the Hall of Fame. One of the greatest power systems of all time, with Phaeton's ability just, you know, it just takes the cake, man. Also, the Phantom Troop just clear out this ant's nest like it's another day in the office, another day clocking into work. Proving that, you know, the elite humans are stronger than the average Chimera ants. Also, Phaeton proves to us that experience, tactics, and a super refined Nen ability can definitely triumph over a physically stronger opponent. Quick honourable mention to the Zoldyx right now, yeah? Xeno Zoldyx talking to Pitou, talking about some never turn your back on your opponent. He's saying, yo, don't look away from me. Xeno, of course, looks away. And kaboom, we get a demolition. I mean, it's not a fight, so that's why it's not on this list. But Silver takes this guy to the ground. Again, you know, the Chimera ants are strong, and they have some cool abilities, some of them. But they are still inferior as a species to the elite Nen users. Now, speed versus strength. Youpi was one of the 3 royal guards, and in the Chimera ant arc during the invasion, you know, he's a key protector of the king, guarding these stairs, which, can I just say, took about 20 episodes to get past. This is where Gon, Killua, Chameleon Guy, Knuckle, Morel, and Shoot ran up. It took them God knows how many episodes to get up these stairs. But once they eventually got past these stairs and like later on, Knuckle faces off against Youpi. This fight was titled Speed versus Strength, you might be asking. Let me cook. I'm giving the background right now. Knuckle is a really good character, but I'll mention him in another video, where I analyse some of the characters in this arc. So he's throwing a punch at like what he thought was a vulnerable Youpi, but in the last second before Knuckle connects, Youpi locks in. And at this point when I saw this for the first time, I fully thought it was the end of Knuckle. But then we get a stronger character to be a saving grace, as we see Youpi suddenly just paralyze and freeze by lightning. When I saw this blue lightning, I was gassed. I was so hyped because I already knew who it was. Knuckle then quickly lands about 8 punches on Youpi and just runs. Now enter the OG aura farmer on this earth, on this planet. Ladies and gentlemen, the heir to the Zoldyck family throne. Of course, I'm talking about my boy, Killua. I don't know why I announced that like it was a boxing fight. Like I mentioned before, this is a display of speed versus strength, with our boy Kill activating his Godspeed technique, which is so fast I'm pretty sure he outspeeds every single character in this verse. He electrocutes Youpi, then Weave, kicks him in the face, stands there with his nonchalant aura, and then blitzes him so fast, Youpi literally can't transform into a more powerful self. Bah! Bah! Slap! The narrator gives us a lovely update on this Godspeed power, explaining there's 2 core components. First being speed of lightning, obviously making him Sonic the Hedgehog in terms of speed. The second lets him respond to the opponent's movements instantly, which is called Whirlwind. Ba 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 ba. Alright, there's this painting called Scream, which is like some ghost on a bridge-esque. My boy Youpi looks exactly like that painting. Youpi says himself that the attacks are no more than 1/10 of his power, but he's completely stuck. We also see a super cold frame of Killua. Mmm, tasty. Okay, it's kind of weird actually, isn't it? But then his Godspeed ran out and he ran away to be saved by this chameleon guy. Again, chameleon guy's got the coolest Nen ability ever, but it's not part of this fight. This fight kind of concludes a long winding point of the story, that in terms of fight IQ, Killua has the most in terms of the main characters. Obviously, you know, he's tactical, he uses his speed to neutralize Youpi, and he knows when to retreat instead of just dying, which, you know, for an 11 or 12-year-old is pretty mature. Obviously, we know Gon is the opposite in this case. It also wraps up this massive character development section that was kind of placed on him at the very beginning of this story. You know, in the Hunter exam, we see his older brother Illumi almost like brainwashing him into believing he should never fight a stronger opponent. And I'm assuming he's been raised since young with this belief. This fight against Youpi proves to us as viewers that he's past that time in his life, because obviously Youpi is so strong. Now, unfortunately, we have a very contrasting fight coming up. This goes completely against the Killua Youpi fight. Killua's mature. Gon, you know, he's childish. And he can't run. And he can't lose. So he fights, which shows us a perfect representation of... Dun dun dun! The price of revenge. This is the fight. A staple in the Hunter x Hunter fanbase. The most generational crash out of all time. And I'm not gonna lie, I know I've kept a serious tone for most of this video. I genuinely don't understand why he was crashing out this much. Because, like, from the story's perspective, he hasn't really known him for that long. Like, if this was Killua dying or Aunt Mito dying, I would understand. But this geezer kind of, you know, Kite, he kind of feels so... this is a sticky one to say. He kind of feels irrelevant, man, to, like, the bigger picture of the story. And, you know, he's only there because of his links to Jing. Look, you know, I'll analyze these characters properly eventually. And I'll go into detail. That's for another day. So let's dive deep on this one-sided massacre. Obviously, we know the backstory to this fight. You know, Gon wanted her to heal Kite. She was like, nah, that boy's gone. Denial. And there was some anger in there as well, man. He's going through these 5 stages of grief. I'm telling you. His emotions, of course, take over him, similar to, like, the last few arcs. But this time, it's to another level. I mean, even Pitou can sense this change. This, like, immense power almost seems to be being dragged from outside. You know, it's all collecting within him. His hair... his hair goes comically long. He finally stops skipping leg day. And, you know, they finally start growing as well. He transforms, skipping years of hard work and training, to gain all the power he will ever have in his entire life. All in a single moment. And he looks down at his hand, you know. I think this symbolizes him losing the will to live. You know, he's got to act out on his revenge. And this is when we see adult Gon, who is the strongest Nen user within the entirety of this anime at this point. Pitou, you know, as she should have been, was absolutely petrified. And rightfully so, you know, the sheer power can be literally felt through the screen. And this frame embodies revenge. It is the level of rage that human faces can't even show. So it has to be scribbles. It's just such, like, a mess, this moment. And it reflects it, you know, I mean, it reflects the story. It's supposed to be a mess, because Gon, he's a mess at this point. You know, Pitou understands this, backs up. He's shocked by Gon's black aura. Then, in a flash, he's gone, waiting in the lobby, with gold aura this time. And you know, this kind of suggests he's the strongest. He's got a crown on his head like a king, in terms of golden Nen. This revenge dished out by Gon is brutal, dodging and weaving that girl Pitou, then throwing her up in the air like a ragdoll. Charges up this John Ken rock attack, and boom, Pitou, an ant that can withstand a hit from Meruem without any physical damage, smashed hundreds of meters across the forest with her face looking straight up disfigured. Killua comes along using his lightning speed and, you know, overlooks this forest where we can see consistent flashing lights like gunshots. The rage has proper taken over Gon. When Killua arrives at the scene, we can see Gon crying. He's literally lost for words. He got his revenge, but Kite didn't come back to life. Absolutely nothing has changed. Basically, this fight was pointless. Kite. Now we see post-mortem Nen, where all of Pitou's Nen gathered. Kind of similar to what happened to Gon, except he didn't die. She uses her whole body's power to go after him, ripping off his arm, which is, it's the same arm he actually lost in Greed Island as well, which is kind of an interesting duality. Post-mortem Nen is known to be stupidly strong. And man, tell me why Gon goes unfazed. This boy just doesn't care. Killua in this scene is such an emotive character. We can see him on the frame where Gon loses his arm. The Killua actually tried to jump and save him. And when he screamed out, to say the least, he's a good friend. Gon's physical strength, even without the use of Nen, is enough to tear through Pitou's flesh. And one final, absolutely humongous, disproportional Jonken rock brings out the checkered flags for this fight. It's all over. This guy's full power Jonken rock attack covered such a wide radius. Adult Gon is actually like a city level threat at this point. Well, revenge has a price, shall we say. And that was in Gon losing his Nen abilities. Which of course kind of makes sense, but it is just so stupid. He throws away his whole future, potential to see his dad, all for revenge. This sacrifice was completely selfish, and it's the complete opposite of this next fight, which, of course is an absolute banger, and I'll get to shortly. The importance of this fight is that Pitou dying doesn't feel like a major accomplishment. It feels kind of empty, like we didn't really gain much from it. She died, and the story continued, the clocks carried on ticking, but Kite didn't come back. It was possibly the most incredible feat of strength in Hunt x Hunter, but nothing changed, man. Kite's death broke Gon both physically and mentally. And Pitou's death, it didn't fix it, man. Now, a sacrifice that brings humanity back. This fight has two titles. The Battle of the Strongest, and of course, the Art of War. The living and breathing representation of strategy, power, and a perfect sacrifice. This is the Chimera Ant's final fight. And by good God, is it absolutely amazing. So let's dive in. Now this is after Xeno's Oldix dragon attack, where him and Netero find the king, and challenge him to a one-on-one duel, far away from anyone else. Meruem and Netero have a little chit-chat, where Meruem admits that he's grown a heart. He no longer wants to kill all humans, only some. The ones he deems worthy are the ones who will survive. He wants to create a fair world with no inequality, which is kind of funny seeing that he wants to rule over everyone, all due to his immense physical power. Netero is fighting for all of humankind, so of course he's got to cook. This conversation between the two strongest happens before Gon's crash out, and we can see the parallels between Gon and Meruem, just based on the way that they're seated. Then we see the walk down. Netero walking the king down with quote-unquote aura, bringing shock and fear, maybe not fear, but shock into Meruem's eyes. And then our big dog Netero, the strongest Nen user to date, reveals his godlike powers. The most refined, perfected human technique versus a pest that he's been tasked to get rid of. Okay, I'm going to butcher this name, I know. 100 type Gyeon Yin Bodhisattva. Now I'm not going to lie, Netero started this fight, throwing the first hands whilst the king was still seated. Netero knows he's weaker than the king, but he refuses to give up, showing the determination of humankind, of course. I'm sure in his head he was doubting it. He's trying to swat Meruem like a fly. Catching him in his hands. But of course Meruem squeezes out, man. Okay, so now we've got some sneaky strategy. Netero plays a really sneaky card, He offers to tell the king his name, only if he can make him surrender. This piece of strategy is so fucking goated, and it will come to play later on. Let this fight cook, Meruem then does the walk-in, and emits out his royal Nen. The seeds have been planted. Netero's strategy and his powers have been laid out. Now, the main episode of their fight is literally called Great Power and Ultimate Power. I mean, that's how you know it's going to be a fight. Netero rises into the sky meditating, like a monk. And we get given a mini flashback, really emphasizing the lengths he went to in his training. Also, don't quote me on this, but I think his technique is taken from Buddhism. I don't know why, it looks like it should be. We see him throw his 99-hand attack on Meruem, a barrage of attacks landing smoothly on the king, and brings them underground into this place with loads of pillars. Netero, interestingly calls this place a tomb for Meruem to be buried in. They're like two warriors in a coliseum at this point, but it's just us the viewers watching eagerly through our screens. My boy bitch slaps Meruem, but Meruem ain't just gonna let that slide, We see his aura through Netero's hands. And he gives sign of appreciation, Nothing but love from the big dog himself. Before things go south for Netero, I want to show you guys these frames, because I remember seeing them for the first time and thinking, damn, Hunter x Hunter's art is just amazing. Meruem politely tells Netero he's reached his physical limit, and that he can't really get much stronger than what he is right now. We see Meruem in the cool blue, and Netero in an angry red. Then Netero crashes out. They keep on going back and forth, you know, Meruem keeps on fighting, and Netero keeps on slapping. You know, doing pretty much no damage. Now whilst Netero is playing checkers, Meruem is playing some 3D chess, figuring out all of Netero's patterns, and he's plotting, of course, his devious checkmate. One of the biggest issues being the strongest in a verse comes with is never having an equal opponent, always outmatching others, and never being able to go all out. That's why when two really strong characters come together to fight, it's always amazing to watch. And also, those who are the strongest can finally have fun. Both Meruem and Netero are having an absolute blast from what it seems. Netero does lose a leg as Meruem finds his first hit. But of course Netero, you know, we always knew he was going to be confident. And he completely rejects the idea of him dying from one lucky hit. We then get this visual representation of them transcending their limits, fighting in an outer space-like environment. I know it's not a real environment, man. Just, it's a metaphor. Netero knows this is the last time he's ever going to fight, but he's still determined. And of course he never gives up. After an exchange of over 1,000 more punches, Netero loses his right arm, which is where, as I've mentioned before, the masterful strategy, power, and a flawless sacrifice come into play, in one of my favourite scenes from the entire anime. Netero says he doesn't need arms to pray, capturing Meruem, and then all of his aura from his entire body, from his entire life, gets poured into a single attack, a single beam of light, coming from his Buddha technique's mouth. And then we see him give that middle finger, god damn. Shit, me cracking up at such an intense moment. This beam of light lands directly, causing some pretty solid damage on Meruem. It's the most we've seen in this entire arc, you know, to be fair. But from this overextension of his Nen abilities, we see Big Dog looking shriveled as a raisin. It's almost like there's no blood left to spill from his open wounds. And you know, he's kind of aged like 30 years in the span of 30 seconds. After a speech from the king, we see Netero laugh with this evil-ass red background. The background music rises as we see this skull slowly appear in the background. A warning to Meruem to never, ever underestimate humans. And he tells him his name and announces that Meruem knows nothing of the bottomless malice in the human heart. Netero's plan, his last resort, comes into play. And while some might comment this is a cheap win, I think it represents humanity and his character really well. You know, and I know, that he can't fail, for whatever reason. He has to kill these ants, so even if it means he dies as well, so be it. So Netero takes his final bow, and the poor man's rose, a bomb planted inside of him, detonates. And whilst this doesn't fully kill Meruem, the poison from it takes him out, alongside Komugi in later episodes. The true ruthlessness of humans, and an ultimate sacrifice, all within the battle of the strongest. Whilst watching through the Chimera Ant arc did feel like walking barefoot on burning coals and Legos at some times, I think every single person, you and me, can agree these fights are genuinely amazing to watch. My favourite, of course, is the Netero fight. That middle finger is hilarious. Phaeton and Zazan's underrated though, and you can't tell me anything different. I've covered most of Hunter x Hunter at this point, and I think you'll really like the two videos on the screen. Let me know your favourite fights from this arc, and whilst you're there, subscribe and like the video to help support me as a creator. Much love guys, what an amazing arc. 9.5 man, 9.5 out of 10.